Hello and welcome to World Konnect, your weekly dose of all that you need to know about what's all making news worldwide. Precisely in the next half an hour, we will connect you to the world and bring to you the news that makes absolute sense, the news that matters the most, and most importantly, the news as it happens. And that's what makes this show different from the similar shows of its ilk. Groundbreaking stories from conflict-torn regions to international politics, from global entertainment to the world of international arts, films, glitterati, culture and much more. I'm Sakal Bhatt and we begin with the World Konnect focus. France declares a national state of emergency, security tightened borders after at least 120 people killed in a night of series of gun and bomb attacks in Paris. Scores killed in the coordinated attacks on Friday the 13th, leaving a nation in mourning and the world in shock. Paris terror attacks add more urgency to combating terrorism as G20 mission in Turkey. Turkey joins the world leaders in condemning the attack in strongest possible terms. After a longest wait, spanning quarter of a century wait, she could finally return to power. Myanmar looking ahead to peaceful democratic transition. Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy wins historic polls. Army says it will accept the people's verdict this time. And known as the Golden Voice of Africa, international acclaimed Afro-pop singer Salif Keita becomes a leading voice to call attention to the plight of albinism, a congenital skin disorder. Our top story. France has declared a national state of emergency and tightened borders after at least 120 people were killed in a night of gun and bomb attacks in Paris. 80 people were reportedly killed after gunmen burst into the Bataclan concert hall and took hostages before security forces stormed the hall. People were shot dead at restaurants and bars at 5 other sites in Paris. 8 attackers are reportedly killed. French President François Hollande, visibly shaken, called Friday night's events a horror and vowed to wage a merciless fight against terrorism.
France mourns and the world stands shocked. Series of unprecedented terror attacks tear through the city of Paris, prompting the government to declare state of emergency and sealing of borders. Scores of innocent diners and concert goers gunned down, many killed in suicide attacks that followed. France saw one of the deadliest attacks in the recent times.
We
have taken the decision to mobilize all possible forces in order to neutralize the terrorists and to guarantee the security of all the areas which could be concerned. I have also asked for military to be present in wider Paris to make sure that no further attack can take place. The second decision which I have taken is to close the borders.
The attackers have been reportedly killed. Islamic State claimed responsibility for the attacks. World leaders condemned the attacks and have pledged to work with France to bring those responsible to justice and combating terrorism. The world leaders have proclaimed solidarity with France in its darkest hour.
This is an attack not just on Paris, it's an attack not just on the people of France, but this is an attack on all of humanity and the universal values that we share.
On behalf of the Australian people, I extend our deep sympathy to the people of France. Our thoughts and prayers are with them at this terrible time.
UN General Secretary Ban Ki-moon has condemned the despicable multiple attacks that took place in the French capital. The bloodiest of attacks in Paris was at Bataclan Concert Hall. Gunmen systematically slaughtered people attending the rock concert. Anti-terrorist commandos eventually launched an assault on the building, killing the gunmen and rescuing dozens of shocked survivors.
We
were by the bar, so we heard firecrackers, or what we thought were firecrackers. We turned around and then I saw 2 young men. no older than 25, with Kalashnikovs. They told us to lie down. There was one who kept gesturing for us to get down. We all lay down. The whole room lay down. I was completely under other people.
More people were massacred in up to 5 other attacks in different locations of the French capital, including an apparent double suicide bombing outside Stade de Francais, where President Hollande and German Foreign Minister were watching a soccer match. Counter-terrorism prosecutors have launched a preliminary investigation. All metro stations, schools and universities in Paris have been shut down. The attacks, though gruesome, may not be entirely unanticipated. France has been on high alert due to a number of terror strikes on its soil earlier this year, including attacks against Charlie Hebdo in January and a foiled attack in August by a heavily armed man on a train.
Well, these are considered the deadliest attacks in Europe since 2004 Madrid bombings. And now let's give you a lowdown on the deadliest terror strikes in France in the year 2015.
January, Boko Haram terrorists entered a village in Nigeria and fired relentlessly. More than 100 massacred. 20th March, suicide attacks by Islamic State terrorists kill 137 in Yemen. 1st April, 147 massacred in a Kenyan university by Islamic State terrorists. 25th June, in Syria, ISIS terrorists kill 146 using car bombs. 1st July, Boko Haram terrorists simultaneously attack several mosques in Nigeria and kill 145. 17 July, over 100 die in Iraq in a car bomb explosion. 20th September, 145 lives lost in Nigeria in serial bomb blasts by Boko Haram. 10th October, 102 killed in suicide attacks in Turkey. 31st October, ISIS claims bombing the plane that killed 224 in Egypt, claim yet to be verified.
In the wake of the attacks, French President François Hollande has cancelled his participation to G20 meeting in Turkey beginning Sunday. Turkey, in fact, has joined the world leaders in condemning these attacks. Terrorism will be in focus during this meet. Here's what else the G20 bloc will discuss in the two-day summit.
The Turkish coastal resort of Antalya plays host to the Group of 20 summit from Sunday. The two-day summit will have the leaders of the Group of 20 major economies discuss global economic challenges. The priority of the summit is outlined as the 3 I's: inclusiveness, implementation and investment. Turkey will provide another opportunity to G20 to confirm 2014 Brisbane summit outcomes. Economic discussions will center on the risks to financial stability from sharply divergent monetary policies in the United States and Europe, China's slowing growth and its transition from an export to a consumer economy, and the impact of slumping commodity prices. Unlike last year's G20 in Brisbane, Russia won't be isolated this year. In 2014, Russia was sidelined over its action in Ukraine and a flight disaster that blamed pro-Russian rebels. This year, in the background, is another flight disaster, downing a Russian plane in Egypt, and this time the investigations focus on the role of IS. The G20 bloc will also be seen discussing issues outside its core remit of coordinating international economic policy. With the summit being held just 500 kilometers from Syria, terrorism and migrant crisis will make inroads into the discussion. Ahead of the summit, head of the International Monetary Fund, Christine Lagarde, called the world to come together to address the migrant crisis. With the Paris Climate Summit just around the corner, the bloc will also discuss the implications of climate change with particular focus on financing aspect. The G20 countries account for 85% of the world economy, 75% of world trade and two-thirds of the world's population.
British Prime Minister David Cameron set out his reform agenda in a letter to European Council President Donald Tusk on Tuesday. Cameron said 4 objectives lay at the heart of the UK's renegotiations: protection of the single market for Britain and other non-Euro countries, boosting competitiveness by setting a target for the reduction of the burden of red tape, exempting Britain from ever closer union, and also bolstering national parliaments and restricting EU migrants' access to in-work benefits such as tax credits. Meanwhile, European Council President Donald Tusk has said that reaching a deal on David Cameron's EU renegotiation goals will be very, very tough. And finally, in news from Europe, the Catalan government vowed to move forward with its secession process, defying orders from Spain's top court. Spain's government had filed an appeal with the Constitutional Court as it seeks to invalidate a bid by the local assembly in Catalonia to start an independence process in the region. Catalonia's parliament on Monday passed a resolution calling for secession from Spain with the aim of forming a Catalan republic within 18 months. In the news from Americas, the US has been a lot in news of late for a spree of shootings and racial attacks. 1 person was killed and 2 others injured in a shooting early Monday near New York City's Penn Station transportation hub in Manhattan. The police has arrested a man believed to be behind these attacks. In another shooting, a gunman was shot and killed on Wednesday after firing several shots from a construction site next to a San Francisco hospital. The man fired off several rounds before officers opened fire. The University of Missouri's president stepped down from his post after protests over his handling of racial tensions on campus rocked the school. College students across the United States staged protests against racial bias on campus. Racial tensions in Missouri flared last year when a white policeman in the St. Louis suburb of Ferguson killed an unarmed black teenager, and a grand jury brought no charges against the officer. Well, this is a town that has just 1 resident, an apocalyptic landscape perhaps. Now let's take a look at this town in Argentina that has turned into a ghost town in the last 30 years.
A busy lakeside tourist village 30 years ago, renowned for its saltwater baths, Effusian town in Argentina is now a silent ghost town. Located 550 kilometers southwest of Buenos Aires, the town came to a sudden end on 10th November 1985. The lakeside resort used to be a top tourist destination in the country. The overflowing Lake Effusian submerged the town completely, forcing the residents and tourists to evacuate. Now 30 years on, the water has evaporated and former residents can walk amidst the rusted out ruins of what was once their home.
Lo que me pasa por adentro es dificilísimo. Extraño el lugar.
It's really difficult to define how I feel. I miss the place with the noises, with its smell, with its feelings. One misses the people, friends, the warmth of the big family that we were. These things I do miss, but you lose your identity, your roots, your belongings.
La pertenencia, perdés un montón de cosas que no, recién ahora las podés definir.
It took more than 25 years for the water to evaporate, and in 2007, structures and objects rendered unrecognizable from the corrosive salt water began to emerge. The ghost town has only 1 inhabitant, 85-year-old Pablo Novak. Over the past few years, the town has been attracting tourists with its airy atmosphere that shows how devastation 3 decades ago has turned into eye-catching landscape.
Well, SeaWorld says it plans to end its signature Shamu killer whale show in San Diego in lieu of a more conservation-minded exhibition of the marine mammals as it faces sagging admissions, regulatory hurdles and pressures from animal rights activists. In place of its centerpiece orca performances, the park plans to open a new killer whale exhibition in 2017, staged in a more natural setting. And if seeing is believing, finally from the world of Americas, here's a bulldog skateboarding into the Guinness World Record. First up in news from Asia, quarter of a century wait before she could return to power. But unlike in 1990s, this time Myanmar is looking much forward to a peaceful democratic transition. Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy has clinched the historic polls, and the army has indicated it will accept the people's verdict this time.
Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy has won a historic majority in Myanmar's elections. The win brings to an end decades of military-backed rule in the country. Despite the win under the constitution, Suu Kyi is barred from becoming president as her children are foreign nationals. The Nobel laureate has, however, made it clear that she will run the country regardless of who the party elects as the next president. Under the indirect electoral system, the upper house, the lower house and the military bloc in parliament each puts forward a presidential candidate. The combined houses then vote on the three candidates. The vote for the presidency will take place after the new members take their seats in both houses in February. The president will assume power by the end of March. The elections have been widely seen as fair, though there were reports of irregularities. Myanmar residents have expressed the hope for change following the win.
I'm very satisfied and happy for this victory. We have been waiting for this for so long. I wish to live freely without any more fear or restraint.
The win is being seen as historic, but the path forward is equally difficult. The army has 25% of the seats and controls key ministries, and also has an effective veto over any proposed constitutional changes. To usher in any change, Suu Kyi has to have the army on the same page. With President Thein Sein promising a peaceful transfer of power to Suu Kyi's party, there is hope that the country's march towards greater democracy after decades of military rule will not be derailed.
From Myanmar's power ship to conflict-ridden Iraq, Kurdish fighters moved to secure their grip on the northern Iraqi town of Sinjar on Friday after an offensive to drive out Islamic State. The Kurdish forces said they had secured town facilities as part of an offensive against IS militants that could provide critical momentum in efforts to defeat the jihadist group. Iraqi Kurdish regional president Masoud Barzani said the town had been seized. The offensive was backed by US and airstrikes. IS has killed and enslaved thousands of people from the Yazidi religious minority when it took Sinjar last year. Meanwhile, the United States has said it is reasonably certain that a US drone strike in Syria has killed the Islamic State militant jihadi John. The Pentagon said airstrikes took place near the Islamic State stronghold of Raqqa in Syria, and it is still seeking final verification that Imwazi, who became known as Jihadi John, was killed in the strike. Afghanistan President Ashraf Ghani appealed for calm after angry protesters from the ethnic Hazara minority tried to force their way into his Kabul palace on Wednesday to demand justice for 7 members of their community beheaded by Islamist militants. Protesters attempted to scale the walls of a building near the palace, prompting police to fire warning shots to scatter the crowd. Islamic State group beheaded 7 civilians, including 3 women, in Zabul province, bordering Ghazni province. And before we move ahead on World Connect, here's a quick glimpse of the 14th Dubai Air Show. Sierra Leone was declared Ebola-free by the World Health Organization when the West African nation had gone 42 days without any new cases. The world's worst recorded outbreak of the virus has infected more than 28,500 people and killed 11,300 in Guinea, Liberia as well as Sierra Leone since it began in December 2013. The United Nations Security Council on Thursday asked Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to report within 15 days on options for boosting the UN presence in Burundi amid growing international concern that violence could spiral into an ethnic conflict. Meanwhile, Belgium has advised its citizens to leave Burundi, and the EU is cutting staff levels in the country because of the rising risk of violence. At least 240 people have been killed meanwhile, and tens of thousands have fled to neighboring states during months of violence that began when President Pierre Nkurunziza decided in April to run for a third term. Well, after 3 years of renovation, Paris Muse Rodin reopened its doors this week with new displays of the French sculptor's works.
The Rodin Museum in Paris welcomed the public back into its galleries nearly 3 years after it closed its doors for a major renovation work. It reopened to the public on the 12th of November, the day of the French sculptor Auguste Rodin's 175th birthday. The Hotel Leone and its garden, the bucolic mansion in the center of the capital, which houses the collection, was home to Rodin himself and was used as a studio space in the years leading up to his death in 1917. All the greatest hits by Rodin are on display at the museum, including The Thinker and The Age of Bronze. The museum now boasts a new layout and previously unseen works as well as paintings from Rodin's personal collection. A prolific artist, Rodin created thousands of busts, figures and sculptural fragments over more than 5 decades. The museum, renowned as one of Europe's great galleries, attracts 700,000 visitors a year and has needed $17 million worth of renovation.
Well, a lot has been happening in the world of entertainment over the last week. John Lennon's stolen guitar sells for millions, and Disney releases its trailer Finding Dory. All this and much more in Showbuzz.
A guitar stolen from the late John Lennon in the 1960s sold for $2.41 million at an auction in California's Beverly Hills, and a Beatles drumhead went for a whopping $2.1 million, fetching some of the highest prices ever for items of rock and roll memorabilia. Heavy metal rock band Motley Crue played the last date in the UK leg of their final tour at London's Wembley Arena, with veteran shock rocker Alice Cooper in support. The iconic band has been together for over 30 years and has sold over 80 million albums. The red carpet was rolled out in Berlin on Friday for the European premiere of Steven Spielberg's latest film, Cold War thriller, Bridge of Spies. Tom Hanks plays a New York lawyer charged with defending a suspected Russian spy.
Well, being pale can be a curse, especially in Africa. One is outcast and even killed for suffering from albinism, which is a rare congenital disorder. Salif Keita is lending his voice to call attention to the plight of albinos in the continent.
He is known as the Golden Voice of Africa. He is respected, regarded and loved. And he sings and spreads the message of love and compassion. But he did not receive the same when he was young. He was rather an outcast. Salif Keita, internationally known Afropop singer, is now Africa's most influential musician and has been so for decades. Being born as an albino child turned out to be the biggest challenge for Salif Keita. He was subjected to discrimination in the hands of his own community. But Salif had other higher goals in mind.
De toutes les façons, partout en Afrique, il y a des problèmes.
Everywhere in Africa, we have common problem in many countries. They are doing human sacrifice. In some countries, fortunately, they don't.
Il y a des gens qui ne le font pas en Afrique.
Keita's musical group rose to international fame in the 1970s and received a National Order Award from the President of Guinea in 1977. His music combines traditional West African music styles with influences from both Europe and the Americas. Like Keita, Mame Suleiman is also fighting for the plight of albinos. She is from Zanzibar and is raising her voice against the evil through her music, which is based on albinism.
So I wrote to Katili to raise awareness and to remind me of such a thing, and to tell my people and to tell the world that this is going on, and they think this is right and they think they can get away with it.
It is estimated that in the continent, 1 in every 5,000 to 15,000 people have albinism, with selected populations having estimates as high as 1 in 1,000. A report claimed that in Tanzania, more than 70 albinos have been reportedly murdered since 2000. In some parts, they are even mutilated, with reports of body parts being used for witchcraft. Albinism is a congenital disorder characterized by the complete or partial absence of pigment in the skin. It is also associated with a number of vision defects. Mame and Keita are fighting this deep-rooted stigma against albinism and are hopeful that through music they will be able to persuade communities to abandon old beliefs and embrace albino people.
And with this, we end this edition of World Connect. But do send us your feedback as always. You can write to us. Our email ID is worldconnect.ddnews@gmail.com. We'll look forward to hear from you. And we definitely are overwhelmed with the response of our viewers. You can always follow us on Facebook as well. Connect with us by clicking on the link which is right there on your TV screens. But before we wrap up, we'll leave you with the interesting visuals from the International Space Station. A US astronaut played Amazing Grace on his bagpipe. Take a look. Namaskar.